Hi everyone, this is Uche Maple. So we are officially live, going live on YouTube. First and foremost, I just want to say, hope everyone is having a great day today. My name is Uche Maple, and I am a leadership and business strategist. I am the owner of the Leadership Business Accelerator. We are a leadership and business training company, and we help high performing professionals start and build their side business into six figures. Our mission is that each one and everyone deserves to live the quality of life that they deserve to live, which includes being financially independent, financial freedom, and just overall well being. So, if you want more information into who we are and what we do, all you have to do is look down into the information portion of this video, and you can find out all the information about us. And I'm really excited today because we have such an amazing person coming in, and I am not going to wait any longer. So I'm going to bring up Kidde Kelly.
Hi, Uche.
Hi, how are
So nice.
you?
I'm good. So nice to see you.
So for those of you, I want to say it's Kitty, right?
It's Kitty. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because for years I was spelling it with an IE,
Yeah. A lot
but
of
I'm
people do.
excited because I met Kitty maybe 2016. It's been that long.
Yeah. It's been a while.
When she was when I was working in Richardson, Texas, and she was there as a representative working with the company as well. And I saw her in a lot of our training classes, and she was doing such an amazing job. Very a forward thinker in terms of how leadership was, how we do leadership. Period. And Kitty was always thinking ahead, and she stood out in the crowd amongst others. So I'm just excited that years later that we're able to meet,
Hmm.
and
Absolutely.
so much has happened
Yes.
that I can't wait to get into this. So before we even get started, Kitty, can you just introduce yourself, and
Mhm.
what is it that you want people to know about you?
Thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity to Uche. I would tell you, I am a HR executive who has led HR organizations for about 25 years. I am a certified professional and executive coach, and I've helped leaders throughout my career to just help them to grow, to develop, and to lead organizations effectively. As a transformational leader myself, I try to teach them to be transformational, and to lead with the heart of diversity, equity, inclusion in mind, as well as employee engagement. I'm currently a doctoral candidate. I don't know if you know that. That's
I
been
did
new since I've
not.
seen you. Yeah.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you. And I just the other night presented and received approval for my research case study on a project entitled Leadership and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiatives in the U.S. Workplace. So I'm totally excited to be able to start to do my field research to get that underway to complete my degree. But I'm also extremely excited to be joining you and your listeners to share my perspective on leadership as well.
Thank you. Listen, I don't know about you guys, but that was such an amazing, amazing bio in itself. I didn't know you were getting your doctoral, but
Yeah.
I think that's awesome, and I love the fact that you are. Are you doing a thesis?
Yep, and that's my title of the project I was telling you about: leadership and diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the U.S. workplace, and it really is focused on looking at leadership buy-in and how that impacts DEI in the workplace, as well as associate engagement in terms of the numbers and how it shows up in their representation.
Okay, so I gotta ask a question
Yeah.
up front. All right, so so in 2020
Uh-huh.
and 2021, it maybe happened in 2022. There was a massive hiring for chief DEI,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
And I'm just saying on LinkedIn, right? Everyone was stating they were getting these opportunities in these positions.
Hmm.
And then it seemed that they were transferring out of those roles.
Yep.
Not all, but I'm
Hmm.
just saying in general, and that it was more or less like lip service.
Yep.
Well, so since this is so because of your dissertation,
Hmm.
and researching this, what were some of the factors that led to the sudden incline and then the sudden decline in terms of just that overall hiring for those particular roles?
Well, in 2020, that's when George Floyd murder happened. Organizations had to start looking at DEI from the perspective of how does this impact me in the workplace, because they had African American associates in their organization or employees in their organization stand up saying, "Do you see me?" Pretty much. And how are you going to show us that you really want to make a transformation in your business? So here it is, bring in that chief strategy person for doing DE and I work in their organization. So that's why you saw the influx. What happened when people got in there is that it was what you said, lip service in a lot of cases, in terms of they weren't really ready for the transformation that was needed. They weren't ready to transform their leaders and transform the cultures to ensure that they could truly be inclusive and that they can make sure that people felt belonging to those organizations. And so I think that's a lot of why you saw it was there and then it went away. Or some people were able to be successful because they were intentional about the questions that they were asking going into the interview process. Like, are we truly going to be able to move the needle and have the buy-in of the right people to be able to do so?
Do you think we will ever get to the point where DEI is not lip service completely?
I don't know. When you think about the fact that Title 7 has been around over 50 years, and when you look at the rate of CEOs and people in leadership, we were fortunate, you and I, being at the levels that we were in organizations in management, because you don't see it. And even in the organizations that we see today, where you don't have that many people of color that are supporting organizations in those leadership roles where they can make that impact. It's taken us nearly 60 years. It may take us another 60 years of getting close to where we need to be.
It's funny you said that. I remember my first day,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember going into someone's office and they said, "You're the first person I have seen in this department in that role." And I remember saying, "What did I come into?"
Right. Right. Yeah.
Because I thought I had did a thorough research, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was an eye opener for me, but it also gave me, I felt, a boilerplate in terms of what to happen next. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry, if you can hear the dog, she's going. Um, but that was interesting that you said that, and I just remember my first day. Someone had
Mm-hmm.
brought me in their office that
Yeah.
they said that. Yeah. Okay. So listen, we got a lot of good things going on. No, we can talk all day.
Right.
Because so much has happened and so many things, to be honest with you, right?
That's right.
and
Mm-hmm.
and for everyone who is watching right now, if you have any questions, so this is not just for if you are an employee working in the workplace. This is even for a small business owners and you have employees and you
Mm-hmm.
have questions about DE&I, because it can't even be overlooked in
Right.
your organization. So
That's
don't
right.
think you're exempt because you may have only 5, 4, 3. The point is that that behavior exists. And if you have questions and if your employees are telling you certain things that you need to listen and you don't know what to do, baby, you better ask these questions right now because Kidde is here. Okay. So
Right.
let's just be clear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now let's just back up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about 3 influential people in your life and how they have impacted you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'm going to have to start first with my mom. I am the 12th of 13 kids. And so she basically raised us pretty much most of my life as a divorced mother, setting high standards for us as children, trying to make sure that she raised some productive citizens in society, really pushed us to have a faith in God. Yet every day she reminded us that we had the opportunity to make a difference. That really stuck with me because I think every organization that I've gone to, that's been my mantra: leave it better than you before you came. And I can say everywhere that I've been, I've made that difference. People have told me that. And I still hear from people on LinkedIn today where I made a difference in their life, even 20, 25, 30 years ago. So that's something that stayed with me from her. I will say also the other two are leaders that I actually work for. So I had an HR executive who came in who really transformed how the HR organization functioned. And it was really important for me to be able to see that being an HR leader myself, how you do that in a way that is very instrumental and intentional about how you want to show up and how you want your team to show up. So I take that away from her in terms of she showed me how to effectively lead an HR organization. It took me a long time in my career to get to see that, and so it was important for me to be able to do that because I took a lot of things from her that I use today in my roles. And then the last one was a male president of an organization. I showed up as his HR leader. And when I tell you he was such a transformational type of leader, he showed me how to lead teams, how to lead a thriving organization, how to treat your teams, embrace them, make sure that you show them appreciation. He had this phrase about if I was in a boat and I need to survive, these are the people that I'm going to take with me. And those people, he made sure that he took care of them. He recognized them. He made sure that they knew that they were valued. He was such a teacher. He actually is really the catalyst for helping me to start some generational wealth of my family because he was one of the first leaders that gave me stock options. And when he offered them to me, he said, Kidde, have you ever received these before? And I was like, no. He said, sit down, let's talk about it. I want to teach you how to use these and how to make this work for you. And so things like that, you don't see people doing that every day. And even asking the question because he could have just assumed that I knew. And so I think that is another thing that you make sure you surround yourself by great people. You are always a teacher and a leader that people want to follow.
Were- that is so powerful. Were you did you know you wanted to work for him, or did it just was that intentional? Like, were you
It
being
wasn't,
strategic?
no. Yeah, I got to the organization. It's so funny. I got to the organization, and when I was there, everybody who interviewed me was laid off the day before I started. So
What?
I'm walking into the organization, the HR leader, and I'm like, what in the world? Like you said, what have I walked into? It was so true. And so I immediately called the senior VP of HR who had interviewed me. She was in the headquarters down in Texas, which is why I ended up in Texas. But anyway, I called her. I was like, what is going on? She said, you're going to be fine. I knew you probably were going to call me as soon as you came into the organization. And so she sent the person in who was temporarily acting as the president to kind of sit down and walk me through what was going on. They were going through a leadership change. They brought me in intentionally because they wanted me to be a part of that new leadership team. He was hired to work with me. And the very first day that I met him, he came in, he told me his story. He made sure, he said, I got to stay connected to my HR person. You are probably one of the most important people on my team. I need to make sure that we fit. And I'm telling you, what we did with that organization was transformational. I still hear from those folks today and try to stay as connected to him and other leaders in that organization because of the impact that we made.
So you know I gotta be nosy and ask.
Hmm.
What was it before and what did it transform into?
We actually were a single entity owned by a large company in the pharmaceutical industry. And we were one of the few that weren't a product maker. And so we actually we relocated the majority of those associates from Baltimore to Texas. And when I did that, that was the first time that I became a director of HR because that it was a promotional opportunity for me. And so went down there intentionally. There was some trouble with them kind of accepting people that were from different racial backgrounds because they hadn't seen people like me that were in leadership. But I came down there with the mindset that you're going to work with us. And even I had some run-ins with people and had a talk with the senior VP of HR. It's like he needs to apologize. He owes me an apology, and he owes every one of these associates an apology because if I'm not for it, they're not going to come down here and move this company. And he did. And so it was, a little bit in my tenure during the time that I was down here, he was let go because he never really changed. He did, provided a lip service, but some other things came up. And so he ended up losing his job. But it went from everyone being here in the Baltimore area, moving them to an area where they could all thrive. The company is making money. They're one of the top 10 organizations today. And so I think I am the catalyst for helping a lot of the diversity that they saw in that organization, because I showed up as a leader that knew what I was talking about, that brought the strategy and helped to continue to transform the organization.
That's right. I wish I had applause going on in the background. No, that's awesome.
Mhm.
Congratulations to you. How did you
Thank you.
feel?
It was very rewarding at the time. I probably made some of the most money I ever made in my career while I was in that role, and end up leaving because of the emotional well-being that it was taking on me. We had I was responsible for multiple businesses, and they weren't doing well, and they were really trying to get the business to a sizable organization, and to the organizations that were profitable. And so I became that character, and I forget the name of the movie where George Clooney is flying all over the country and he's laying people off. And so they knew when they saw me when I showed up that they were going to be laid off. And so that was me for a long time. And it just got to be too draining. And so I was like, okay, you need to take a pause. I stopped for a little while and ran my own HR organization, consulting company at the time. And that's before I came to the organization where you and I met.
Really?
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, wow. You
Yeah.
did a lot.
Yeah.
Um, 8 years ago,
Mhm.
5 years ago, you did a lot. I
Mhm.
didn't know you did all that. See, you never know a person's story.
Right.
Wow, I didn't know you did all of that.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that okay, so my admiration of you was already up here. Now
Yeah.
it's out the roof.
Uh,
Um and the reason why I say that is because um you were mostly doing a lot of training when I met you.
mhm.
But the
Organization
fact that you did
development.
all of that
Mhm.
prior
Yeah.
is insane. I had no idea.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay, so you weren't even tapping into everything when I met you. You were just like, this is easy stuff for me. I can wake
It
up and do this thing
was, but I
myself.
was intentional about picking that opportunity because I wanted to kind of be behind the scenes a little bit. I needed a break. And
Mhm.
so when I got ready to move back out there after I left there, I went into an organization where I was able to transform and then just kind of continued on from there. But yeah, I was intentional about taking that step back because it was easy for me, and I was really coasting.
And that's why okay, now it makes sense to be honest with you. No, because when I firmly believe when people are operating in their highest level of talents and strengths, that they do it with ease. And now
Hmm.
that makes sense because whenever I was in any of your classes, it just appeared that it was always flowing.
Hmm.
There was never an interruption.
Right.
We got what we needed. Everyone understood the assignment. And that
Hmm.
makes sense. And I thought it was because you had been doing it for years.
No.
It's just that you were just in your swim lane and you were just swimming.
That's right. Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Thank
Yeah.
you for that, though.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. I'm loving it. I'm learning a lot. This is why you got to talk to people so you can learn stuff. Because you don't know if you don't ask. We don't
Right.
know. So just a different question too.
Mhm.
When we're on that topic is what advice would you give? And just asking, what advice would you give people who feel like they know they need to take a break, but they feel that they will let others down because there's not too many people in the role that they have.
Wow, that's a deep one. Uh,
And it's one that happens all the time.
it does. It really does. And I would tell you, sometimes you have to look at yourself where you are in your career, and you got to say, what do I need? We often, when we show up like that, and we find out that we're the only one, we carry a lot of weight on our shoulders, and sometimes that weight is too heavy. And it gets to be a burden, and it causes so much stress. You have to take the time to figure out, is this the right opportunity for me right now? And what else do I need? And so I think throughout your career, you'll have those times where it begins to be too much. Sometimes it is. I know when the organization I was just telling you about, where I went and was that first Black person that they saw as a director of HR. I got to the point, I was in that organization about 5 years. And when I tell you, I had team members who came to see me when I was getting ready to leave the organization. One of the young ladies who I hadn't seen in about a year, and she flew up to Texas to see me off and took me out to dinner. And she was like, Kidde, your hair, you cut your hair. And I was like, no, it's fallen out to this point. That's how stressed out I was. And so it was me purposely taking time out for myself because I knew it was too much. And so you have to do throughout your career, do a reflective look out externally, and then do an introspective look and make sure that this is the right time for you to be in that space. And sometimes you got to make the decision that it's not the place for you. If you're not able to thrive while you're in that moment, it's time to look for something else. And I know it's a lot of you feel like you might be letting people down, but you keep in touch with those people who you want to keep in that circle of friends, and you continue to bolster them up, and they do the same for you. People have done that throughout my whole career.
Everyone, that's sound advice. And she's speaking from experience. So if any of you are experiencing that right now, please take notes, because it is real. And when Kidde talked about the company her and I worked for, I remember, because let me just say this, where we worked, okay, I would say this, where I was stressed out every day.
Right. I bet you were. Yeah. And I tried to clean some of that up before you came on board. And I was successful in removing some of the baggage, but it wasn't all gone by the time you got there.
Listen, I used to have dreams about work, but it wasn't until, I'll never forget this. This was in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Our CISSP, I forgot her name, security person, she had left for a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
And when she came back, I was like, where have you been? And she said, oh, you didn't know. And she had went out for an illness.
Mm-hmm.
And she had made the comment that the doctor she went to, she told him that, she said, we keep you in business because we keep coming here for our hearts. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, you don't notice that people around here are not 100%? I was like, yeah, but I thought that was just how they were. She said, no, they've had a stroke. They've had
Mm-hmm.
a heart attack. And that
Mm-hmm.
shifted the mess out of me.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was just them naturally. But looking back, the organization was just like that. It was nonstop, and everyone was operating in that way. Whereas, in my opinion, where I was, it wasn't frowned upon,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't looked favorably if you needed to take a day off because well-being was a factor.
Right.
So it was, okay.
Think
But yeah,
about
that was
how
my turning
toxic
point.
that environment is, though. I mean, when you look back at that and you look at where you left and where you went to after that, even before, starting your business, how you were able to kind of easily transition because of that toxic environment. You got to detox from that sometimes. And that's exactly what you did. I remember us having a conversation about you doing that very thing.
Yeah, I actually, when I left, my body shut down for a month. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
even know anything was wrong. And then
Right.
I just was getting headaches. I had to sleep. And that's when I was like, oh, you were just going, you weren't even paying attention to the
Mm-mm.
signs. So,
Mm-mm.
like I said, we could talk about this all day. But the point is that don't remember your well being is very critical, because one thing we do know is that if anything happens to you today, they're going to replace you tomorrow.
That's right.
So, okay, couple of let's get into this. This is good. Okay, so going back into leadership and in the workplace, how
Mm-hmm.
has the past 2 years impacted how high performing leaders are leading in today's workplace?
Well, I would say, first of all, the ones that are doing very well, they're being intentional about what they do. And I will give you a good example of something that just recently happened to me, where right before the pandemic happened, I had gone into an organization and had entered in during the second year of a 3-year contract. We were not able to bid on the contract again because the contract owner had selected another company unbeknownst to us. And so I basically worked myself out of a job, joined the organization. Within 3 months, I found out that we had 15 months left in the contract. And so we had to announce a shutdown to the organization. So all these people resting on my shoulders, the only HR leader. And when I got there, their employment and engagement scores were extremely low. And so I was already working on that. And then hear this big announcement about this shutdown. And so we went through make the announcement. I was really strategic about making sure if going back to my boating analogy, who do we need to keep on the boat if everybody decides to leave? So we strategically pick those people out, made sure that they were retained. And so very intentional and strategic about picking that. But not only that, wanting to make sure that everybody in the organization was set up for success. So I started doing offering training, even financial well-being, to make sure when people get this influx of money, what am I going to do, and how am I going to budget even until I get this money, to make sure that I have, kind of this cushion for my family. Brought in and led a lot of training in terms of interviewing skills, resume writing skills, helping people redo their resumes to set people up for success. And in addition to all the training, and then right after we made the announcement, that's when the pandemic hit. So now you got all these people going through this really uncertain time, and then another thing hits. And even prior to that, right before, no, I think we just went home right when George Floyd was murdered. So then you're talking about engagement scores being low. How are you going to help these people? So we set up leaders to have crucial conversations with their team. I led crucial conversations with their team. How are you feeling? Tell people. Made sure there was a mix of people, mix of races on the phone as we were having these conversations. When was the first time that you saw racism? So we got it out. We put it out on the table. And then continued on to help make sure that by the time that 15 months was up, I had the lowest attrition rate that they ever had in the organization. And not only that, increased the engagement scores 15 basis points in a year when people knew they were losing their job. Weekly, I gave everybody a newsletter so everybody knew what was going on. Every Friday, I held a 30-minute staying connected meeting, whether I led it, whether I had the associates actually displaying their talent or sharing announcements. And so we stay connected as a family. And I would tell you, when I left, I still hear from some of those folks today too, where they've either gotten another opportunity, reaching out on LinkedIn or what have you. But the majority of associates ended up either going with the contractor because I had set them up to be able to move over, or they had their severance package and had their resumes ready so that they could hit the street the next day. And so where are you going, Kidde? Are you staying with the company? I was like, nope, they don't have opportunity for me. I made sure all of them were taken care of even before I started even looking for a job. And then a job just fell in my lap. And so I, again, making that positive difference in people's lives. It was transformational. And that's another point in my career where I'm extremely proud of what I was able to do to help ensure that they were successful.
Wow. But Kidde, that's what you did. Which I would not expect any less, because that just shows your passion and dedication really to people that work for you or in any environment that you're in, representing them in terms of HR.
Mm-hmm.
But from the more global perspective, have you started seeing shifts in leaders, like, leaders that normally behave a certain way or do things a certain way, even CEOs, even just companies, period. Have you seen that type of shift in terms of what moving forward, right? Because we know 2020, a lot of people were putting things out there,
Right.
but I'm just saying, like, even now, has that scenery changed?
I think in some organizations, yes, some of the leaders who were a little bit more agile made it work. But I gave that story just to basically be able to say, as a leader, at any point in time, you have to be intentional about how you lead. So not only knowing the situation, it can't just be focused on the situation, it's got to be focused on your people. The best leaders have followers, and that's what makes them leaders. They're not just managers. And so then you have to look at those, how those individuals can thrive in that situation and help ensure that you make that happen. Create your plan, and then you got to execute it. That's the most successful leaders.
They're intentional.
Hmm.
Nicole Gaines has asked, how can entrepreneurs tap into DEI in a corporate space?
I've seen a lot of this too, where people have started their consulting companies where they are going in, meeting with the CEOs and creating opportunities for them to consult with them. The organization that I'm with now, when I first joined, they were working with a small independent consulting company, and she did just that. I don't think that they would be as successful or at the space where they are with DNI without having her help. So if you are a DEI practitioner, or if you have some foundational material that you can help support organizations, start doing that. Reach out, tap into your network. Do you need some insights on DEI, or do you know someone who's starting a strategy and they need some support? That's the best way that I would say to recommend for people to start.
All right, you heard it, Nicole. That's excellent advice. That's awesome. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Thank you. That's good advice. And you're right. I have heard people doing that independently, but that's good. Okay, so why do you believe there was such a mass exodus from the workplace?
It's just what we were talking about. You had leaders who were either focused on themselves and not their associates. They weren't showing them that they were respected, valued, and heard. They weren't taking the time to recognize them. And so people were like, if I'm going to take a look at my life, it to me, I call it, and I think I heard somebody else coin this phrase. It wasn't the great resignation. It's the great realization. What
Mm,
is important to me? Is this what or how I want to spend my life? Is this person that I'm working for somebody who cares about me and shows me that I'm valued? Or are they all about working to please the higher ups? That's why you saw the mass exodus. And that's why it's still happening today, because leaders still haven't figured it out that that's what's turning people away.
do you think it's a generational thing?
No, I don't.
Mm.
I don't.
Do you think it's a cultural thing?
In a lot of ways, you got to look at who's in leadership. And in a lot of ways, it is cultural. And it's those who have been successful and where they haven't had to kind of acquiesce to what needs
Mm,
to happen.
okay.
And so they're continuing to do the same thing and working the same way. It's a new day, and it's going to continue to be a new day. I tell people all the time that this is not just people were like, well, what's the new normal? It's no longer new normal. It's what's the next normal, because it's
Mm.
going to continue to change.
Wow, that's interesting. What did you say? You said that's not the new normal, it's the
It's the
next
next
normal. It's
normal.
change. It's like it's constantly evolving and changing
That's right.
all
That's
the
right.
time.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, that's interesting. That's good. That's real good. Yeah, that's good. And you're right. People. I have. So when I retired last year, first and foremost, I didn't know I was going to retire,
Hmm.
but because of well-being,
Hmm.
right? Um, I decided to leave. And I will say this, and if she is ever listening, Miss Rubin kicked me in my butt
Hmm.
because I was like, I'm the second African American holding this job in this department. What are they going to say about me? And she was like, do you really think you're that special? That the whole weight of the world, everybody's out African American community, just about you. And I was like, I guess not. She's like, child, please. When you leave, they're gonna replace you. And I was like, okay. But
Hmm.
it was so many people leaving. And I remember as a leader, it was stressful because people were coming in every day because there was like something happening in the family.
Hmm.
And I remember telling my leader up, and I said, we're gonna have to start having more empathy
Hmm.
as leaders now.
Right.
And it's no longer, well, you better figure it out. It's And that's a shift.
Mhm.
Is that the new currency?
People need to bring their whole selves to work.
Mhm.
And when they're not able to do it and you as a leader don't recognize it, that turns people away. And they take that as I'm not valued. I'm not worth them even caring to ask me how I'm doing. That's
Mm.
and people are no longer taking that. They're saying what's important to me. I want to work for somebody who is going to help support me, who understands who I am, who knows about my family and cares about me as a person so that I can thrive. That's what leaders have to be cognizant of.
Do you think leaders have to, do they need training on that?
They do. A lot of them don't have it. That's so. It's one of the things that we've been focused on in the organization that I'm on now. I'm in now in terms of overall well-being. What does that look like, and how do you recognize the signs when people are not themselves? It's not just about people moving widgets and making production and manufacturing a product. You got to make sure that you are intentional about asking people, even saying good morning. The company that we worked at, we walked around all the time and you speak to people and people wouldn't open their mouths. You can't do that any longer. People are not going to take that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. But that was a culture. That was
It was, but that's what organizations need. They need to shift the culture and they need to be intentional about how they go about doing it and saying these are the things that we will accept and these are the things that we won't accept. And so you got to start with your leadership because they are driving a lot of that.
so. Get it. What are things that what's happening? What are how are companies helping leaders? Because
Um,
that's a lot too, right? I mean, everything is shifting, so more on people leaders.
mhm.
But what are the benefits? What are things to help people leaders adjust to what is now being asked of them?
I think it's providing that training, helping them to understand what well-being really means. It's not just about the health side. I think there's like about 8 different aspects of
It is.
well-being, and you have to make sure that you are able to tap into all of them. Whereas usually, that whole command and control leadership of a lot of what we faced, in that particular industry, that doesn't work. And it is now teaching them also how to help the general. You talked about a generational issue. That's another thing that I'm seeing actually creep up in the workplace, where now that we have all these generations, we started teaching it, but you have to understand what's important to each one of them, and it's going to be different for each person.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot.
It is a lot. It's a job. It takes a lot to be a leader. Everybody who says that they are a leader are not a leader, and you have to want to do it and to do it effectively, and not and to ensure that you don't have high attrition numbers.
What is the benefit of doing it effectively? How does that benefit the company?
Well, you retain your talent. You don't see this mass exodus of people leaving. You create loyalty, you build trust, you build
Mhm.
strong teams. All of those things are important. And for organizations who really want to continue to thrive, that's what they need. It has to be a dedicated and intentional focus on helping leaders to be able to manage in this new environment.
She said intentional and dedicated focus. And that's the real. Like that is intentional and dedicated focus are two things that Kitty just said in this app. If you don't take anything else from that, those are two things.
Hmm.
Okay, so how is okay? So we just talked about how leadership is transforming in today's workplace,
Mhm.
but how do leaders who need to show more empathy? What does that look like?
They have to understand what empathy is, first of all. I'm
Hmm.
working with a leader now, and he knows that that is his area of weakness. And so I'm like, did you ask somebody today how they were doing? Did you intentionally stop before you started barking out orders just to check in on them? Making sure that they understand what truly motivates people and meeting them where they are in that type of way, that matters. You if you can't care for the people that you are around the majority hours of the day, you're not going to be successful. I'm seeing it in some of the departments where we have to really focus on our leaders in that way, and they're wondering why people are leaving. You have to be willing to change. You got to shift your behavior and make sure that you are a leader that people want to work for.
That stings.
Mhm.
You have to be a leader that someone wants to work for. Because what we do know is that usually in the workplace, people who are able to produce new technology, win proposals, win contracts, right? They're technically very astute. They're doing breaking, innovative, and creative things, right? That doesn't mean that no one else is doing it, but they are doing groundbreaking, creative things, and they're usually the ones who get put into people leadership positions. Do you still think that that is going to continue, or is that just going to evolve more for leaders who are being intentional
Mhm.
and dedicated, focused, right? And I'm talking about their bosses.
Mhm.
Are they, is it just evolving now where instead of people, because people used to say, hey, don't put them in those roles, but if we're putting them in there, is it now where we're going to make sure that they are more well-rounded and equipped to handle this new way of being in the workplace?
Yeah, that's the role of the HR person and the people who are responsible for talent management within the organizations. They have to make sure that they are helping that person pivot from being that technical expert to being that people leader. And if it comes to a point where it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to thrive, then you got to keep them on the technical track. Don't set yourself up for allowing a lot of good engineers and other people who, quality and regulatory affairs, that type of person to lead the organization because you want to help this person. Keep them on the technical track. They can continue to go up the technical track. And so you need to have leaders who want to be people leaders. It's a difference. There is you have to have the right HR people with that mindset too, that will help lead those type of initiatives and have those serious conversations with leaders that are at the VP level and C-suite level to say, this person is not ready and this is why they're not ready. Here are the things that I need to see to make sure that I can support this promotion. I've had those conversations in the organization that I'm in today.
Wow. I remember when I first started working at the company Kidde and I worked for, and they were hiring for a manager, and they were considering this person. And again, being new,
Mm-hmm.
and they were going around the room asking the opinion, and everyone was like, "Yeah, yeah," and I was like, "I don't think so because they're not. This person is not where the company is headed." And I'll never forget. Everyone just stared at me, and I was like, "Oh Lord, I'm about to get fired."
I felt like I was getting fired almost every day at that company because I was making statements like that.
But the manager, he was like, okay. He received it
Mm-hmm.
and that was it. And I was like, oh Lord, okay. Because I was new. But I
Yeah.
knew where the company wanted to be,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that if they had made a move like that, it was going to just continue where they was or go backwards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think in a sense, everyone who's leaders, what I get from this is it's okay to be bold.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay, um, if you see something to be able to speak up, right? Because that's the biggest thing. And the company that I retired from, it's difficult to change. Not even culture, but people that worked in a culture for so long
Mm-hmm.
that it is even difficult for them to see that change is happening.
Yep.
So, what advice would you give leaders when they are trying to be a better leader, when they
Mm-hmm.
are trying to prioritize well-being, but the people that's working for them are rejecting it?
Rejecting it. I haven't had people reject it if a leader has been intentional. I've seen it where leadership above them may not be supportive, but
Mhm.
people on their teams, I haven't actually seen that where um, they don't embrace the fact that the leader is saying you need to take some time off and that I care about you. Most people embrace the fact that you are that type of leader. I would say if you are in that space, don't stop. You need to be intentional about doing it though. You have to make sure that it's coming across in a way that is respectful and showing them that you truly do value them because it's the right thing to do. If people cannot bring their whole self to work, even the leader themselves bringing their whole self to work, it's not going to make them successful. You need to think about being successful for your team, for them to thrive, for the organization to thrive, and for you to thrive.
What does bring your whole self to work? Because I've had so many conversations on this. Someone's like, well, I don't want to wear, and this is how I hear them talking to me. I'm not saying this is how they
Okay. All right.
but I want to wear this and wear this, and I want to be like myself, or and I think sometimes we confuse when we're at home in our comfort space
Right.
of I'm authentic, this is me, versus when we get into the work setting. So what does it mean? And I'm saying in the workspace to bring yourself, your authentic self to work.
Well, first of all, even the lines between work-life balance have become blurred throughout this pandemic. People, individual employees and leaders have to be intentional about setting the expectation in regard to what it means. Working from home, if you are working, you still should be presentable as if you're working. And that doesn't mean that you should be wearing your disco clothes or even your workout clothes. There's something about getting up and changing yourself and making yourself kind of, even Superman, he changed into his outfit. We have to get employees and leaders to do that as well, because it makes a difference in your whole day, in your whole persona, and how you interact with people on Zoom even. And so we have to make sure that we set those expectations that when you're at work, we expect it to be work. And so that means you need to, but when your first question was, does it mean to bring your whole self to work? You can't forget about the mental aspects of people, and you have to be intentional about looking for, again, those signs when they are not bringing their whole selves. That's what we're teaching our leaders to do now, in terms of, I've seen more mental health issues creep up in the workplace than I've ever had in my whole career.
Do you think it's
Um,
always been there?
I think some of it has, but I think the pandemic has exacerbated it. Some of it was people were the only person working, and they're in the home. They had no one around to talk to. They didn't have that human connectivity. One of the reasons why I was saying about that example that I gave earlier, I knew that that was happening for a lot of my team members, which is why I started that Staying Connected Friday. I was like, it's just 30 minutes. If you can't join, don't worry about joining. But I'm going to show up every Friday. Even on the Fridays when I was off, for that 30 minutes, I joined the call. And people will say, you were the glue that held us together. Somebody needed to do it, because people didn't have a whole lot of, their networks weren't big enough to help make sure that somebody was looking in and taking care of them. Again, it's about that intentionality.
Wow, that's powerful. Yeah, by you saying that, it just brought back a memory of, I remember maybe last year when we found out a coworker had passed away. Well, someone I knew that I had worked for in the past had passed away,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I just saw them like that Friday, and they found out that Wednesday, and no one has seen him for 2 days.
Hmm. Hmm.
So when you said staying connected,
Right.
that's what it reminded me of.
Hmm.
Right? Is just that, because I didn't think about it. You're right. Some people didn't have an extended network. It was just them,
Hmm.
and that loneliness, and not being able to go out like they normally do. Um, wow, that's I didn't think about that until you brought that up.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's well. Thank you for doing that. Even though it wasn't with me, I know I would have been on if you had told me about it. But thank
Yeah,
you.
and I
That's
think I think
awesome.
yeah, and I think we're still seeing the residual effects of that. It's not gone, and that's why I said it's the next normal. So now, how are we going to pivot and address those issues? Which is why you see a lot of organizations focused on well-being. It's a high need for all organizations.
I was telling my a friend of mine that I feel like I'm just now having the um the after effects of 2020
Hmm.
and 2021. Like in 2020, I didn't have time. I was just like, it was just what it was, right? I didn't have a chance to feel what was happening.
Hmm.
And in the latter part of 2021, I began to feel the effects.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
now it's like I'm still feeling that
Right.
now. it's like it's delayed.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Mm-hmm.
what you're seeing as well? Is
I
that,
do.
yeah, okay.
I see it even in people when things happen, even close to them, that people can't even own it enough that they can grieve and feel like they have that space to be able to do it. I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing a lot of people coming to work and crouching down because the weight of everything pressures on them has taken a toll and they didn't even see it coming. So you're seeing that stuff show up in the workplace, which is why you have to make sure leaders are prepared to address it. You have well-being champions to help support you and make sure that you're trying to create these networks so that people feel like they have a space or someone to help them through it. Because they've been holding it. A lot of people have been holding it and carrying it on their own for the last 2 years.
Wow. Thank you for all you do. Whew. I want to work for you. You're so awesome.
My team will tell you the same thing.
That's so awesome. Okay, so how real is burnout for leaders?
It's very real, and it was what I was thinking about that when was one of the questions that you had sent over to me, and I was like, here I am going to be talking about burnout, and I'm probably on the precipice of that right now myself. Not only am I holding up my whole HR organization, holding up the organization, trying to rebuild this culture, I'm also in my downtime working on a doctoral degree. I'm like, who does that? And so, but you know what? It is very real. You have to find those spaces and those people who you can surround yourself with, who can support you. One of the things that I just did this month was I reached out to a bunch of my sister friends. We're getting ready to get together because it's like I got a break in school, and I was like, I haven't been around my people. I need to bring my folks around me because that's my circle. And so I hadn't been with them for a while. So we're going to get together and we're just going to do a relax and chill weekend. And that's going to help me to kind of really focus on me, but also be with people that I love and care about.
You hear her, she's even taking breaks too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
High performing individuals taking breaks.
You
Learn.
have to. You have to.
So you answered the next question. How do you practice self-care? Thank you for answering that. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So how can the listeners find you online? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so I have my website that I talked to you about. I started the Catalyst for Discovery group probably about 4 years ago now. So I'm at www.catalystfordiscovery.com. And then they can also find me on LinkedIn. I haven't gotten to my Uche level where I am having all these different websites and stuff like that. I have to get there and be like you one day. But right now, that's the two places that they can find me: LinkedIn and on my personal website for my business
Okay. And LinkedIn is at
at Kidde Kelly. And I think it's I don't know if I have numbers behind my name or not, but I
you
should
don't,
be
you
the
don't.
only Kidde dot
You are.
Kelly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for those of you who want to find her, you'll be able to find her. And also too, we'll put the information inside of YouTube as well. Is there anything else that you would like for the listeners to know that we didn't talk about before we get off?
Yeah, I would just say I've been talking about intentionality a lot, and you don't have to verbalize your intentions to for them to be realized. I didn't get to say that before, so I do want to say that. And I think being deliberate and ensuring that you have a plan to execute your intentions is important. That's when you're going to have the best results. Being intentional. And I think that hopefully there is at least one thing that I said. I know you took a couple of things away, but hopefully one thing I said, offer them a resource or a tool that they can add to their leadership toolkit. And I wish just everybody the best of luck in their leadership journeys. And as Uche mentioned, I'm happy to connect with anyone to help you support you in your personal journey or your company. Whatever I can do to help support you, I would be happy to do that.
There you go. So everyone, please go to LinkedIn. Make sure you follow her. She's at Kidde Kelly, KiddeEkelly. She's the only one in there, and you'll be able to see her. And your website, is your website mentioned on your LinkedIn page?
I think I may have it on there, but I'll repeat it again just so people have it. It's www.catalystfordiscovery.com. So
Okay, so
Catalyst
that's
for.
what we also have in the chat field as well. Everyone, thank you for going. So Kidde, I'm going to let you out, and I'll be right back. Okay.
Okay. All right.
So, everyone, thank you for showing up today. It was such a great conversation. For those of you, if you have any additional questions, please be sure to put it in the comments. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. And also, to get notification, just click the bell and you get notified when we go live. We're going to be doing this mostly every Thursday night. in terms of interviewing and bringing great information, great content for LEAP. LEAP stands for Leadership, Entrepreneurship, and Purpose. And if you have any ideas or any recommendations on who you would like to see on here, please leave in the comment field below. Everyone have a great night and an awesome day. Bye.